a scramble for the White House and Democrats to try to contain fallout after that searing special counsel report describing the president's memory lapses. New reaction late today and new pushback as we wait to see whether President Biden himself may say more live later on this hour. Plus, some dramatic breaking news just into us here. Look at this. A plane crashing on a Florida highway in just the last hour. We're going to be live with what we know about what happened in just a minute. Then to more breaking news on the stock market. The S&P closing above 5,000 for the first time ever. What it means for your money and for the economic vibes in this country. Plus, a manhunt right now in Tennessee for a man labeled armed and dangerous who allegedly killed a deputy. The fallen officer solemnly honored with a processional late today. We'll take you there. And in tonight's original, it's becoming more of an issue across the country. Millions of students chronically absent from school. So is putting parents behind bars the solution? And we are live from Vegas with the Super Bowl price spike and a take on the tailor of it all that only our Harry Smith can provide. That's a little later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we are coming on the air with the White House trying to fight back against what's seen as a political body blow to President Biden. A spokesperson late today suggesting the special counsel who chose not to charge the president for his handling of classified documents also caved to political pressure, he says, in describing President Biden as old and forgetful. Listen.
When you are the first special counsel in history not to indict anybody, there is pressure to criticize and to make, statements that maybe otherwise you wouldn't make. And, I think that it leaves you wondering why some of these critiques are in there.
President Biden himself today taking no questions so far, although, of course, he did at that news conference overnight, which we'll get to in just a second. Keep in mind, we are set to see him again just about 40 minutes from now. After a report that, remember, as we told you, is breaking news on this show 24 hours ago, it pulled no punches, finding, in the exact words of the special counsel, that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials while he was a private citizen. This was after his time as VP. That in doing so, he presented serious risks to national security, and that no charges would be filed because a jury would have a hard time convicting. And this is the quote. We're about to show it to you in just a second here. This is the quote that everybody's talking about, right? The special counsel describing President Biden is saying a jury would have a tough time convicting a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. NBC's Mark Murray will join us in just a second, but I want to get to Monica Alva, who's doing a ton of reporting on this, posted up near the White House. So we've seen the on-the-record comments here from a White House spokesperson. We obviously saw what went down with President Biden last night when he came out at that hastily called press availability, defended his memory lapses, got emotional on that. Also confused, of course, Mexico with Egypt at one point. Give us a sense of what you're hearing from people behind the scenes, Monica, as to how the White House is going to try to get a handle on this.
And they really are now forcefully defending the president here, Hallie, and the defense is twofold. Number one, they're trying to really explain to people about this question of willfully retaining these classified documents, that there's more context that the White House wants to be clear about. For instance, there is some of this classified material that is in these personal diaries, these notebooks from when Joe Biden was vice president, that he kept, and he believed he had a right to keep them, he says, because he wanted to see how history was going to play out and whether his position on certain things ended up being right. And so that is one half of it. But the other half of it, and the one that a lot of people are talking about, are these charges, these really damning allegations from special counsel Robert Hur as it relates to the president's memory, his ability to recall certain details. And the White House defense on that is that they are simply calling that gratuitous. They are saying it's inappropriate. The vice president today, who herself is a former prosecutor, said that really it was quite unprofessional of him to do that. And here is a little bit more on that personal defense from the White House today when it comes to this claim of Robert Hur making politically motivated charges from a White House spokesman. Take a listen.
They have denigrated the rule of law for political purposes. That reality creates a ton of pressure. And in that pressurized political environment, when the inevitable conclusion is that the facts and the evidence don't support any charges, you're left to wonder why this report spends time making gratuitous and inappropriate criticisms of the president.
So they're arguing, Hallie, because this report was nearly 400 pages long, but ultimately did not charge him with any crime, why the special counsel went into detail on some of these things. But the other really key point the White House tried to make today is that the president cooperated fully with this year-long investigation, which is obviously in contrast to his predecessor, former President Trump, who is facing actual criminal charges for his handling of classified documents. So they want to keep making sure that people know that there are really important differences between these two cases. Hallie.
Monica, can I ask you a question? The White House, part of the pushback today that we heard is that things that the special counsel wrote in that report were not accurate, specifically as it related to some of the memory lapses. What are they pointing to that was not accurate specifically?
They are saying, and really you saw this from President Biden when he came out last night and brought this up, that one line in this, again, multi-hundred-page report is what was most infuriating to the president and that he says is wrong, which is where Robert Hur alleges that the president could not recall when his own son, Beau Biden, had died within several years. So President Biden came out last night and said, of course I remember when my beloved son passed away, and that is one example of really what they view as a cheap shot and something that's a bit below the belt from a personal perspective, but also one they say that just isn't accurate. There are other questions in the report about whether he remembers when he was vice president or not, but the actual interview is classified at this time. So it's possible they may declassify some of it so that the public can really see how that exchange went. Hallie.
Yeah, Monica Alba, I think a lot of folks watching for that one. Thank you so much there, doing great reporting live for us outside the White House. Mark Murray, let me get to you here, because part of what the issue seems to be, based on some of the conversations that I've been having with Democrats, as one put it to me, this plays into the preconceived concerns that voters already had about President Biden. As you know, our NBC News polling showed that 76% have concerns about President Biden's age and his mental fitness for the job. Tell me how you see it as far as the political impact. We know legally this is not a legal indictment. It may be a political indictment.
Well, and politically, a lot of this has been baked in, Hallie. So you're exactly right. Our new poll shows 76% of voters say that they have concerns about President Biden's age and mental fitness to serve in a second term. But we asked this exact same question back in, asked the same question in September, and our poll found 74% had concerns. So this has been hovering over the entire political landscape for the past year. And you could actually even make the argument this has actually been something that President Biden's been dealing with when he ran for president back in 2020, being then the oldest person to serve in office. And, you know, now it is fair that her allegations take resonance because this is not a political opponent. This is someone who is a special counsel who's looking into this. But the Trump campaign has been going after Joe Biden on his age and fitness for a long time now.
As one person put it to me, Joe Biden woke up with a challenge on his age yesterday morning. He wakes up with a challenge on his age this morning. He will wake up with a challenge related to his age tomorrow morning as well, I think is how some see it. The other piece of this, though, and you mentioned former President Trump, Mark, there are two things that are true that happened over the course of the last 18 hours. Donald Trump went on stage and gave a speech where he did not bring up President Biden's memory lapses. Donald Trump, so far that we've seen today, hasn't truth socialed himself personally about Joe Biden's memory lapses. This comes, right, as Donald Trump himself, who is 4 years younger than Joe Biden, so in his late 70s versus President Biden in his early 80s, has mixed up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi, has had some high-profile, flubs or missteps of his own here. And yet, the numbers look very different when it comes to how voters see Donald Trump. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so Hallie, in our poll, 48% of voters say they have concerns about Donald Trump's age and fitness, about half of what it is for President Biden. Now, one explanation is just kind of like the kinetic, forensic, cosmetic, here's Donald Trump firing off tweets or truth socials or holding news
Just
events.
Flooding the zone, is that what you're saying?
Exactly, despite all the chaos and all the verbal flubs. Part of it is like just the kind of activity versus you end up seeing from President Biden. But Hallie, here's the other part that's in our poll. When we ask the question about, do you have concerns about President Biden, half of Democrats end up saying yes. Even though a lot of those people are going to continue to vote for President Biden, for Republicans, only a sliver have concerns. And so part of the reason the numbers are inflated is that it's Democrats who are also saying, hey, I have concerns about President Biden's age and fitness, even if I might vote for him.
Mark Murray, thank you so much. There is a lot to unpack on this one. I know you'll continue to do that as we look for more reporting and more news potentially out of the White House. Mark, thank you. But we got to get to some breaking news first down in Florida. First responders are on the scene. Look at this. A small plane crashed onto a highway there, I-75. Look at this. You see it there, the plumes of black smoke up into the sky. Obviously, cars stopped. Cars on the other side of the highway also slowing down. I want to show you the live scene now. You can see ambulances, police, fire crews, all still out there. Looks like they've been able to clear some of the cars, but you know that this is something that they are going to be looking at for hours yet. Tom Costello is joining us now. This is all developing very quickly. What are the facts of the matter?
This happened on I-75 just outside of Naples, and this was a Challenger, a multi-engine Challenger 600 jet, the private jet that was trying to make it to Naples, took off from Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, coming into Naples, and the pilot reported that he had lost both engines. Tried to make an emergency landing right there, as you can see, on the southbound lanes of I-75. It did not end well. There were 5 people on board this private jet. Witnesses say that they saw 3 people get out alive. It's not clear about the other 2. It's also not clear whether anybody on the ground was injured because, as you saw, that plane appeared to hit the wall. It tumbled, and it appeared to also have hit traffic in the area. The Florida Highway Patrol making the point that it was supposed to go on to Naples before going on to, from Naples on to Fort Lauderdale, but this happened just outside of Naples on I-75. We can also tell you that the pilot, we radioed in just before this crash, saying he wasn't going to make it, that he lost both engines and had to put it down. We can also tell you that witnesses on the ground saw that plane coming in and feared the worst as it was coming in. And then quickly tried to render any aid they could, but they were pushed back, as you can see, by the fire and the intense heat and smoke on the ground. We can tell you the fire rescue responded quickly. Police also on the scene. You saw the medevac helicopter there as well. Again, 3 people thought to have gotten out, at least. We're not clear on the condition of the other 2. I-75 southbound right there near Naples. Hallie?
Tom Costello, thanks for being all over this one for us. I know you're going to be following this throughout the night. Appreciate it. We've also got some breaking economic news to get to, with the S&P 500 setting a new record, closing above 5,000 for the first time ever. It's the 5th straight week that the S&P has ended the week higher, fueled by strong economic growth. There's also better than expected earnings season. Let's get right to Mike Santoli at the New York Stock Exchange. Mike, we're so glad to have you. Put it in super plain English, right? Because we say it all the time. The markets are not the economy, but this is still a good signal about where the economy may be headed. Fair?
Fair, for sure, Hallie. I mean, look, the market does run at least in parallel to the economy directionally. Yeah. And yes, a better than expected U.S. economic growth, both in the latter part of last year and continuing into the first weeks of this year, combined with the fact that inflation has come down steadily enough and down to a point where the Federal Reserve has said its next move is to probably cut rates in the coming months. That has all cheered Wall Street. Yes, corporate profits have also started to grow again. They actually had dipped into the middle part of last year. So that together, I would say, with just a really impressive amount of excitement, maybe exuberance over AI and investments related to it, that really seems to be one of the sources of upside energy as well.
Okay, so what does this mean for inflation, which is something else we talk about a lot here, right? This question of what's the Fed going to do on interest rates, et cetera. Help us understand the tea leaves on that.
Well, first of all, the recent trend in inflation has been very encouraging. If you look over the last 6 months, the key inflation gauge that the Federal Reserve looks at has basically been around its long-term target of 2%. Now, the headline number, the CPI, it's going to get reported next week for January, so we're going to get an update on this. It's in the zone of the target. Let's say it's around 3%. So all of that solidifies the idea that we had this huge inflation scare. Interest rates went up a lot. The economy seemed to have a little bit of a stall for a brief period of time, but not for long. And that has combined, along with supply chains clearing, to bring inflation down to levels that are no longer alarming. Now, whether it persists and whether the Fed can say, yeah, we did our job and we're going to lower rates, that remains to be seen. But pretty much everything that's happened since let's say the later part of last summer has definitely fit into the idea that inflation is more benign.
That's super interesting. Okay, Mike, so then what is the vibe check where you are at the stock exchange? Are people feeling pretty good?
Yes, they are. I mean, I have to say, there's been this overlay of skepticism. It seems as if the market's come a long way in a short period of time, and it has. It's up 22% since late October. It's been on a massive run, and people do think some of those tech stocks are acting a little bit overheated, and plausibly so. Maybe you can expect some kind of a pullback. But in general, it's a bull market. People are starting to participate in it. We'll see if it has much more to run from here. But most of the signals suggest that the next pullback probably wouldn't be too deep or lasting.
Mike Santoli, we're so glad to have you. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thanks so much.
Let's take you overseas, because the Israeli prime minister is now ordering the Israeli military to evacuate more than 1 million Palestinians in the southernmost city in Gaza, with Israel's military getting ready to launch a new ground assault there, the same place it told people to go to for shelter when this war started, with so many questions right now. But Hallie IDF is actually, that's the Israeli military. So how is the Israeli military actually going to get these civilians out? Where could they possibly go that's actually safe? It's coming as the U.S. puts out a new warning that Israel's invasion of Rafah risks disaster. President Biden calling Israel's military offensive, in his words, over the top, and what seems to be his most pointed criticism of Israel yet. Matt Bradley is following all of this from Tel Aviv. He is joining us now. So let's take it in two buckets here, Matt. Let's start with this evacuation here of the same place that Israel initially told Gazans to go to for safety. How's it going to work?
Yeah, I don't really know, Hallie, and that's the big question that a lot of Gazans have, and that's the one that a lot of aid agencies are putting up, saying, this is the place that you told all the Palestinians to go, referring to Israel. Now they're there. They're in Rafah. 1.5 million Palestinians, most of whom, the vast majority of whom had already been displaced maybe once, maybe twice from elsewhere in the Gaza Strip. They're seeking refuge in Rafah. The Israelis have already started bombing it, and now the Israelis are saying they need to evacuate that place again. They don't really have any other place to go. The Israelis have flattened much of the Gaza Strip outside of Rafah. They're already in the process now of bombarding Rafah. So there isn't much place where all of these Palestinians can go. Already life in Rafah is already so difficult. People are scrounging for food. They're suffering from disease. They don't have access to hospitals, a lot of which have been encircled and bombed by the Israelis. So this is a humanitarian disaster that even looks worse than the humanitarian disaster we've been seeing in the Gaza Strip over the past 4 months.
And when President Biden, right, the leader of the U.S., a powerful, if not the most powerful ally of Israel in the Western world, says something like the Israeli military offensive is over the top, how does that land where you're standing?
Yeah, well, we haven't actually heard that much of a reaction from the Israelis, but you can bet that they're listening to this. We have been hearing the same kind of thing over the past couple of months, but not directly from the president's mouth. You know, it was like reporting from people who had heard that there were rifts between Biden and Netanyahu, because if you remember at the very beginning, Biden was giving Netanyahu a pretty long leash. And, you know, this is something now where we're starting to see rifts between these two men. Biden is starting to chastise Netanyahu publicly. That's a big step. You know, it's not just rifts we're seeing in private. It's, you know, public messaging. And that's probably one of the reasons why we haven't heard a lot from the Israelis. One other reason might be because a lot of these really, really right-wing Israelis in the cabinet, and this is the most right-wing cabinet that Israel has arguably seen in its history, have already mouthed off about Biden. And so a lot of them, you know, we've heard this before publicly. Benjamin Netanyahu has said to his far-right ministers, stop commenting, especially on the relationship with the United States. That might be why the reaction now is a bit muted.
Matt Bradley, live for us there in Tel Aviv. We're glad to have you there, Matt. Thank you very much. Let's go back here to home, with this weird warm-up in the Midwest tonight, and that seems to be what's fueling a rare tornado. In fact, the first of its kind in the state of Wisconsin. Look at this. You see the funnel cloud forming there. This storm tore through mostly more rural spots, but it left a lot of destruction behind. You can see it here. Roofs off homes, barns destroyed, windows shattered, even dead cattle. Typically, you might expect to see this kind of severe weather in the late spring or early summer, but it's warm right now in the Midwest, and that is not normal. The highs in some spots are 15 to 30 degrees above average, and cities like Detroit, Milwaukee, and Grand Rapids could set records after the warmest January on record. So here we are now, early February. Angie Lastman is joining us now. Feels like we were just talking about record cold temperatures in parts of the Midwest, like in Iowa. Now we're talking about unseasonably warm temperatures. Is this all El Nino related?
Yeah, so here's the deal, Hallie. We've got a storm system that gave us the fuel that we needed for some of these systems. You said it yourself. It was very spring-like. That's when we often see some of these stronger, more severe storm systems working through. And that's what happened yesterday. But you're wondering, where did we get the fuel for those? For these systems, you need some warmth. You need some moisture. It was just warm enough across the Midwest in places like Wisconsin, where we were seeing upper 50s and a little bit of moisture to tap into to see some of these tornadoes forming. We know that with human-fueled climate change, this is going to be something that we often see more of as we get down the line and as it worsens. And that puts us in the record books. You mentioned it. February, the first ever that we've seen a tornado in the state of Wisconsin. That happened last night. It isn't the earliest on record that we've seen a tornado ever, but there's only two other occurrences. You got to go back to 2008 to see the top one, and then 1967, the one standing in the secondary spot. So the temperatures, yes, they were a big player in yesterday's tornado, in yesterday's severe weather. And you can see even today, we are standing well above normal for our high temperatures, running 20 to 30 degrees above normal, not just across the Midwest, but all the way out east too. Washington, D.C., New York. St. Louis came in at 69 degrees, near 70 degrees this afternoon, Hallie, and these temperatures are going to continue over the next couple of days.
Angie Lastman, thank you very much there, breaking it all down for us. Appreciate it. Of course, take it to Tennessee and an urgent manhunt there tonight as police look for the man who they say is armed and dangerous, suspected of shooting and killing a deputy during a traffic stop. I want to show you this. The funeral procession late today. All those police cars, the officers on motorcycles, headed to Deputy Greg McCowan's burial, solemnly honoring his life. He was shot and killed after police say the suspect refused to get out of his car at a traffic stop last night. Another deputy was also heard with police dispatch recordings capturing it all. Watch.
35 shots fired. I'm hit. 334's hit. Help! Help! I've been shot. 335. 344's down. I've been hit. Suspect fled.
Terrifying moments there. I want to bring in Guad Venegas. So then what is the latest on the search to try to find this man and the sense in the community tonight?
Hallie, well, police are still searching for him. The sheriff spoke to the press last night, informing that both federal and state officers had joined this investigation. They've, of course, shared the mugshot. They've shared those photos that you showed, and he's been identified as 42-year-old Kenneth DeHart. We also know that there is now a combined reward of more than $60,000 for any information that could lead to the arrest of this individual. Now, the warrant that's been issued for his arrest is for a first-degree murder as well as attempted first-degree murder and one count of a felon in possession of a weapon in connection to a shooting. He has a long criminal history that dates back to 2002, including at one point a standoff with police. So he is still at large as we wait in the next few minutes for a new press conference from authorities there with more information, Hallie.
And in a news conference, I know the last time that we heard from the sheriff, or at least one of the times, the sheriff said they were going to get this suspect off the streets and behind bars. In his words, it got pretty emotional.
He got very emotional. The sheriff said in the 35 years he's been the sheriff, he had never had to experience something like what he went through last night. Here's the sheriff speaking to the media.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done. So sorry that we've lost. I talked to his family earlier. I apologize for not protecting him.
Very emotional, not just the sheriff, but also the deputies that were surrounding him. Now, we also have photos of the two officers, the 43-year-old Greg McCowan, who you showed the images. There was a procession happening just minutes ago. He was the officer that was killed, who had recently joined the sheriff's department as a full-time officer or deputy after being a reserve deputy for many years. And the other deputy is 22-year-old Shelby Eggers, who was injured in a leg. Now, some of the details that we've been able to obtain from authorities of what happened is that the two officers had stopped this subject, and at one point he didn't want to get out of the vehicle. They tried using a stun gun that did not work, and at that point He produced a firearm that he fired against the 2 officers. Now, the second officer that was injured is recovering from that injury. As authorities, again, the Sheriff's Department has joined the state and federal authorities in the search for the suspect.
Guad Venegas, thank you very much for that. Some more breaking news just into us. We're just learning that 2 people died in that plane crash in Florida we told you about a couple of minutes ago. That's just into us now from the county sheriff down there, who says the FAA is now leading this investigation. 5 people were on board the plane when it crashed on I-75. The NTSB will investigate what happened here, of course. And we're going to see Tom Costello again in just a couple of minutes at the top of the hour with the latest on this story. Also ahead this hour, a new twist in the corruption trial against the NRA. Why the prosecution's concerned that the group's ex-leader could end up back in his job as former President Trump speaks in front of some of those members tonight. And later, what's making cocoa so expensive? Why it's not just that Taylor and Travis who could be celebrating this weekend. We'll explain in just a second. But first, former President Trump, in just about 30 minutes from now, is set to speak to a crowd of NRA members up in Pennsylvania, putting some of his political muscle behind this controversial group, of course, the NRA, which is in the middle of a massive corruption trial and hemorrhaging members. That's raising some new questions about an organization that, for a while, had been seen as one of the most powerful in politics. Our Garrick Hake has more.
The NRA working this week to regain relevance, hosting former President Trump at a major event as it digs in, fighting a long legal battle over civil corruption charges. New York Attorney General Letitia James claiming that current and former leaders of the National Rifle Association, including Wayne LaPierre, misspent huge sums of NRA money.
They use millions upon millions of dollars from the NRA for personal use, including for lavish trips for themselves and their families.
The case alleging LaPierre charged over $500,000 on private jet trips to the Bahamas for his family. LaPierre resigned just before the trial began, citing health reasons. His lawyers have defended his conduct in the trial. When he took the stand, he testified that he had no knowledge of the large amounts of money the NRA was spending on private planes and cars, but did not dispute dollar figures when presented with receipts and seemed to confirm using funds for personal travel. It's all happening as the organization also faces declining political and cultural influence. It used to strike fear into the hearts of politicians with its vast, hyperactive membership base and massive lobbying power. But tax filings show the organization has lost over 1 million members in the last 5 years, with dues down $14 million just between 2021 and 2022, according to an audit filed as part of the suit. The trial highlighting internal turmoil between leaders. But in a potential blow to the New York AG, NRA lawyers filing a motion asking the judge to dismiss a portion of the case. They say some claims have passed the statute of limitations and may not apply to the executives on trial. A decision from the judge on the motion still pending.
It could be significant. What the judge is voicing doubt about are the claims against the individual defendants, not the NRA itself.
Stuart Bishop has been in the courtroom covering the trial for Law 360.
As one of the people on the Attorney General's team said in open court, what they're concerned about is that Wayne LaPierre could essentially, after trial, walk right back into his old position.
The New York AG's office declining to comment, and neither the NRA nor LaPierre responded to our request for comment. The opening day of the trial, the NRA's counsel said in a statement that the AG, quote, cannot prove that the association or its board did anything wrong. While the case doesn't carry any criminal charges, it marks what seems to be a shift in how some prosecutors and victims are combating gun violence in the courtroom. The focus was once almost exclusively on holding shooters criminally responsible. But now prosecutors changing tactics, Letitia James scrutinizing the NRA's finances. And just this week, the mother of a Michigan school shooter becoming the first parent to be found criminally responsible for a child's mass shooting after failing to secure the firearm or act on warning signs.
And Garrett is joining us now live from where that's happening. So, Garrett, given everything that you just laid out there, how should we be reading into former President Trump's appearance in front of this group tonight where you are?
Well, Hallie, I think it's a little bit about returning loyalty. Remember, the NRA was one of the first kind of mainstream conservative organizations to lend its imprimatur to Donald Trump back in 2015, 2016, when he was a New Yorker, former Democrat, no history of gun ownership or support for hunting or anything like that. But they embraced Donald Trump culturally pretty early in his political career, and he has long embraced them right back. He has spoken to them at dark times before, too, including a couple years ago, right after Uvalde. I covered that speech as well. So this is a very politically activated, very dialed-in group of voters in a very important swing state in this particular case. It only makes sense for him to try to return their embrace, even if this organization is not what it used to be historically.
Garrett Hake live for us there where it's all going down. Garrett, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1. The Marine Corps is now identifying the 5 Marines who were killed in that helicopter crash we told you about in California. Lance Corporal Donovan Davis, Sergeant Alec Langan, Captain Benjamin Moulton, Captain Jack Casey, Captain Miguel Nava. All 5 were in their 20s. Remember, that chopper crashed in the mountains outside San Diego during a storm. The military, of course, is still investigating what exactly happened here. Number 2, Maryland's former governor Larry Hogan is now jumping into the race for Senate in his home state just hours before the deadline to file. He's been one of the few prominent Republican critics of former President Donald Trump, with Hogan saying it's an announcement, we need leaders willing to stand up to both parties. Number 3, cocoa prices are spiking, hitting record highs this week. That means chocolate is getting more expensive. Experts say it's probably because bad weather in Africa has been damaging crops. Over the past year, prices have doubled. I realize that's not what you want to hear right before Valentine's Day, but we are merely the messenger. Number 4, the Guinness Book of World Records is reversing course with this matchstick drama we've talked about. The guy who built the Eiffel Tower with 700,000 matchsticks will get that world record he so covets. Remember, Guinness originally said he used the wrong matches and it didn't count. Now Guinness is like, well, maybe we were too heavy-handed. They say it is a valid attempt. Number 5, guess who's going to headline the White House Correspondents' Dinner in April? Colin Jost. Yes, the co-anchor of SNL's Weekend Update for the past 10 years. Jost, of course, well known to a lot of folks. He's formerly been a newspaper reporter and an editor, so we'll see when we come back. New York City police making an arrest tonight of a gunman accused of shooting somebody in Times Square. We'll tell you what led up to the moments that a tourist got hurt. Plus, how a police chase in Oklahoma ended up with this. Look at that. We are learning in just the last few minutes that a 15-year-old migrant is under arrest, suspected of shooting an innocent bystander near New York's Times Square, according to senior law enforcement officials. All of it happening just after 7 o'clock last night. Police say 3 people were shoplifting, putting clothes into a shopping bag when they were approached by store security. That's when police say one of the suspects pulled out a gun and fired. A tourist was hit in the leg. She was taken to the hospital and expected to recover. The alleged shooter is also suspected of attempted murder for firing at a police officer who responded to the scene. Tom Winter is joining us now. Tom, tell us more about what happened. Who's in custody? What do we know?
Right, Hallie. So when we look at this incident, you got to think it's in the middle of one of the most packed tourist areas in the entire United States. It's a sports store at 42nd and Broadway, right next to Times Square. And it's kind of a dramatic movie scene that played out, except for it almost had very deadly consequences because this individual, according to police and police officials who've spoken publicly, was in the act of shoplifting. He was confronted by a security guard and he fires his gun. He hits a bystander, a tourist from Brazil, and then proceeds to flee the scene. Later, police catch up to him and a cohort of his who's also in custody. He then leaves that area, and that police officer fleeing happens to go between buildings literally 2.5 blocks that way from where I am sitting in this camera, and sees a police officer, and according to the NYPD, turns and fires his gun not once but twice. The officer, according to the police, did not fire back because there were so many people that were there and trying to run and escape the shooter. He was just too afraid that he was going to hit one of these people in the act of trying to stop that person. You know, in the video there, you showed white jacket and white hat on the ground. The NYPD says that belonged to the shooter when he went into the subway, literally below where I'm sitting right now. And then eventually he was taken into custody today by the U.S. Marshals, one of their task force up in Yonkers, New York. So it's been kind of a wild 24 hours here looking for somebody who was wanted on 2 prior crimes, both involving a gun as well, Hallie.
You know, Times Square, you referenced how packed it is, what a tourist spot it is. I think people might not realize that a couple decades ago, Times Square looked a lot different.
It sure did. It sure did, Hallie. I mean, when you look at the crime statistics going back then, you look at the NYPD 15, 20-year historicals, they're down, you know, we're looking at year over year, 30% compared to 2 years ago, 8% just compared to last year, year over year. You go back 15, 20 years, you're talking about decreases of over 100%. So in other words, it's just completely gone down over this time period. And overall, murders, no murders in the Times Square area. But these type of incidents do give people a sense of potential lawlessness and have folks concerned. And so that's one of the reasons why it's focused on. We saw in the video there the police presence that existed. I know Hallie Jackson, and Hallie Jackson now likes the details, so I got into it today with the NYPD. It was what's called a level 1 mobilization. It can be called by a sergeant or above, and anytime you have a shooting at police officers, particularly in such a crowded area, you know, the heart of New York City, you're going to get those folks with the long guns that you saw, the helmets, the strategic response group who you're looking at now. So this is kind of the standard response when you're dealing with, you're not sure what this person's going to do next, and there's a lot of innocent lives on the line.
Tom Winter, thank you so much for the update and for getting into it with us here tonight on the show. Appreciate it.
Got it.
NBC News covers hundreds of other stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Southern Bureau, a door-to-door salesman in Texas says he is lucky to be alive after a homeowner shot at him. He's not hurt, thanks to a tablet, look at this, that he says stopped the bullet. He says he usually wears it on his side, but this time it was slung across his stomach. Police are still looking for whoever did it and say that person could also face hate crime charges because he reportedly shouted racial slurs before the shooting. Out of our Midwest Bureau, 2 police cars catching fire in Oklahoma City after a high-speed chase. Look at that. Officers were chasing suspects wanted in a connection to a home invasion. They ended up driving on grass when heat from the cars caused them to ignite, basically. You see the aftermath here. Nobody was hurt. 4 people are in custody. And out of our Western Bureau, a wedding chapel in Vegas is celebrating the Super Bowl by offering a free wedding. With a catch, a free wedding only if your names are Taylor and Travis. So there you go. They say it's because all those rumors flying around that maybe Travis Kelce proposes to Taylor Swift if the Chiefs win. I mean, like, well, you never know. Chapel says the offer applies to both that Travis and that Taylor if they choose to also then tie the knot on game day. We'll see. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. Truancy and absenteeism among school students is now the highest it has ever been. That means more kids are out of school for more days than ever before. To fight the problem, some school districts are taking some, what critics say are draconian measures. We're talking fines, community service, even threats of jail time for parents. So is the solve to this to put parents behind bars? Rahema Ellis has more.
Almost 15 million students chronically absent or missing at least 18 days of school. That's the challenge the country faces.
4 in 10 D.C. students are missing too much school.
Truancy and absenteeism are at record highs.
And it got worse during the pandemic. 80% worse in the 2021-2022 school year versus the year before. So how are states trying to solve the truancy problem? Some parents are being prosecuted and locked up.
I don't want to miss out on high school.
Texas sophomore Diego Ruiz says he's a diligent student, excited about the high school experience.
It's really important years of your life.
But he and his mom, Felicia Perez, were tied up in court, both charged with violating the state's mandatory school attendance laws after Diego was absent 21 days from Woodville High last spring in pain with a stomach ulcer.
I thought that this was just ridiculous because of the accusations.
In addition to a $200 fine against her, Perez's son was ordered to do 16 hours of community service, and she could face jail time. What would happen to your family if the police were to arrest you for these truancy charges?
That would be very counterproductive to what it is that they were trying to do, which was get them to school.
Their story, an example of some of the more draconian truancy penalties across the country.
No one is prosecuting people like me.
Missouri attorney Ellen Flotman worked on appealing the sentence of a single mother who served 15 days in jail for her son's 14-day absence.
They're prosecuting indigent, poor single mothers like my two clients.
Some districts are paying attention, partnering with outside agencies to combat the problem without quickly moving to prosecution.
We'll do in-home family assessments, or they'll do family assessments at the school.
Mobile, Alabama District Attorney Keith Blackwood says early intervention is having a tremendous impact in his district.
As of December, we had 10 petitions filed. That is still far less than the hundreds of petitions that were filed over the last 4 or 5 years.
Almost 61,000 cases were petitioned to juvenile courts in 2018, according to a national report from the Council of State Governments Justice Center. Their research shows that an arrest, court involvement, or suspension decreases the chance of kids attending classes and completing high school. In Texas, truancy laws require intervention before the courts get involved. The district says if a student continues to be absent 10 or more days after it has exhausted all resources available, it is required by state law to refer the student to truancy court. Perez disputes this claim in describing communication with school officials.
There should be some sympathy in there, and there should be some concern. There was nothing. There was no go-between.
How do you feel about this fine and the potential arrest of your mother?
I passed all my classes last year. I got masters on all the tests, but despite all of that, it's still an issue. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't have been in the first place.
Rahema Ellis, NBC News.
Our thanks to Rahema for that reporting. A lot more to get to here on the show, including coming up how Disney's working to try to get advertisements to fit your mood. How? We've got that in just a sec. Disney set to use the magic of AI to help make its ads fit your mood a little better. In other words, trying to match the advertisements you see, the commercials, to the vibe of like a specific scene in a show or movie you're watching on Disney Plus or Hulu. They're calling it Disney's Magic Words. How does it work? It's like a combo of AI and machine learning that'll analyze and tag scenes from its library and then ID the brands, the images, the moods that work best with whatever you're seeing. Vanity Fair special correspondent Brian Stelter joins us now to talk about it all. Brian, it's great to see you. So listen, there are some experts out there like Ad Age who say this is one of the ways that advertisers and marketers are really trying to explore how some of this technology could be used to change how ads are delivered. And I'm so struck by and you know this, listen, in the eyes of these big companies, all of us are simply vessels for search words for the algorithm, right? We're all targetable. And the better these companies can target us, the more money they'll pay. Fair?
100%. This is why I thought this was the most interesting tech and media story of the week, because what Disney is doing is what many advertising executives want to do. I've spoken with these marketing firms that are very intrigued by this technology, and this is not years and years away. This is already happening, and we're going to see more and more of it. If you think about the Super Bowl this weekend, the Super Bowl is a dumb version of ad targeting, right? The advertisers know that when you're watching the game, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be drinking, they're going to sell you ads for chips and for beer and for drinks. Now, take that to the next level, right? You're watching Disney Plus, you're streaming a movie, and because of the emotions of the movie, advertisers will be able to target those emotions. I could see this going really well in some ways, Hallie, but imagine the downsides as well. If you're watching a bunch of depressing, dramatic, dark movies in a row, are you going to get an ad for online therapy? This is something that's going to have to be carefully watched.
That's such an interesting point. And what's also interesting here is the way that we're looking at Disney, and we've talked about Disney a bunch this week. I'm sure you saw CNBC's interview with the Disney CEO there. But to make an investment in technology like this, specifically for streaming at a time when so much of the focus, as you well know, and as our audience on streaming well knows, it is becoming such a player as it compares to linear TV.
Right. These media companies have to make it worth the while for consumers in order to share your information, your data, to be targeted in this personal way. It has to be value. There has to be a value add. You know, when I go and sign up for a trip to Disney World, it knows who I am because of Disney Plus. So there's a benefit. And NBC's parent Universal does the same thing. So there are big advantages to this.
but we should look around the corner and think what's coming. For example, Apple Vision Pro in the news in the last couple of weeks. We're going to be in a world in the future where the billboards walking down the road are going to change based on every individual viewer. Each person's going to see a different advertisement. That is both scary, but also potentially really incredible and maybe in some cases valuable. It's just, we don't want to be abused by technology. We want to use it to our benefit. And that's the important part of the trade-off here.
Of course, because some of that, too, is in the eye of the beholder. Brian Stelter, thank you so much. It's great to see you, as always. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the show, why you may have to be a high roller to sit up even real high at the Super Bowl in Vegas. The big money for the big game. Next. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're thinking about a last-minute road trip to the Super Bowl, hope you have a couple months' paycheck stashed away. That's because this year's game is on pace to be the second most expensive Super Bowl ever. Take a look at this. The average ticket price right now. So this is the average ticket, more than $8,000. That's the bar in the very bottom of your screen. The only one more expensive was a couple years ago in 2021. But remember, that's because COVID only meant that about a third of fans could get into the stadium anyway. So classic supply and demand thing there. But listen, that ticket is actually a relative steal. Why? Because look at this chart. Prices just a week and a half ago were more than $11,000. The cheapest ticket, $5,900 right now. Cheapest. So the worst seat in the stadium could be yours for about the same price as renting an apartment in Vegas for 3 months. Steve Patterson is in Las Vegas for the city's first ever Super Bowl. And Steve, okay, it is hella expensive to be at the game, but there are plenty of people ready to spend more money in the gambling capital of the world. Feels like this is a weekend where budget is a dirty word, maybe.
Budget is absolutely a dirty word. And look, part of the reason why I'm standing here is because it is so incredibly expensive to get inside Allegiant Stadium, almost nearly impossible. That's why they have this fan experience. And certainly this is one of the main attractions, but it is not the attraction. The attraction in Vegas, of course, will always be gambling and sports betting. This year, Americans are estimated to spend about $60 million on the big game. That's just betting on the big game, about $115 million in 2023 on all sporting related events. This is big business. Finally, for the first time, the NFL is realizing that, and they're cashing in as well, partnering with some of these sports books. They're estimated to take in somewhere around $1 billion in revenue from sports betting, above board, of course, on their own. About that, I spoke to one of the biggest sports books in town, the CEO of BetMGM, and here's what he told me about this new partnership that really nobody expected. Check this out.
The NFL is implicitly acknowledging the symbiotic relationship between what we do and what they do and how fans love both. And so we're bringing it together in a legitimate way.
And of course, it's so interesting because 10 years ago, nobody would have predicted that there would be a partnership with the NFL. The NFL barely wanted to have its own NFL team in Vegas because of the association, Hallie.
I mean, it is an economic driver, right? And this particular Super Bowl is supposed to bring something like $1 billion to this area. But there's also some controversy about how this stadium and other stadiums are getting built, right?
Yeah, that Stadium Allegiant is one of the most expensive stadiums ever built in the world. It's about $2 billion. It is privately funded, but with the help of taxpayers. And when I say help, I mean heavy help, about 40% taxpayer funded. That's $750 million. To the people that are for it, they might argue, okay, everybody that comes into the Vegas on the Strip spends about $1,100. It is an economic generator for the region. But this is also a region where the school district per pupil funding, classroom sizes, some of the worst in the country. It has people crying out. And they want to do the same thing to attract the Oakland A's here as well. And people not so happy about that. Hallie?
Yeah, super interesting. Steve, I can only imagine that you've been holding that football for a reason. Go long. Let's see it. What you got? Where's your arm?
I threw it. You couldn't see it, but it was an amazing.
Did you throw it to anybody or just into space?
That was no. I just threw it into the crowd. I made sure nobody was around. This guy's gonna throw it back to me though. Hey, me.
All right. Well,
There
you
you
got
go.
hands. Thank you, sir.
Very cathartic.
Appreciate you. Have fun this weekend. Glad you're there. It's Tonight, the White House and Democrats scrambling to contain the fallout after that searing special counsel report describing President Biden's memory lapses. We are live from the White House with new reaction and new pushback. Plus, some dramatic breaking news. A plane crashing on a Florida highway in just the last hour. Deadly, killing 2 people. What we now know about what happened next. Then it's more breaking news on the stock market with the S&P closing above 5,000 for the first time ever. What it means for your money and for the economic vibes in this country. Plus, a manhunt right now in Tennessee for a man police call armed and dangerous, somebody who allegedly killed a deputy. We're just learning the suspect's brother is in custody, but that fallen officer solemnly honored with a processional late today. We'll take you there with those new details. And a teen now in police custody after allegedly shooting a bystander near Times Square in New York. What we know about what happened and what we're learning about the suspect. And how Disney's using AI to make ads fit the mood of whatever you're watching or whatever you're streaming. We'll explain a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight we are coming on the air as just in the last few minutes we saw the president getting ready to leave the White House, leaving the White House. There he is, taking no questions from the reporters gathered there on the White House North Lawn. His staff fighting back against what can only be described as a political body blow to President Biden from the special counsel in that scathing report. You see a spokesperson here for the White House late today suggesting the special counsel, who chose not to charge the president for his handling of classified documents, that spokesperson suggesting that the special counsel caved to political pressure in describing the president as old and forgetful. Listen.
When you are the first special counsel in history not to indict anybody, there is pressure to criticize and to make, statements that maybe otherwise you wouldn't make. And, I think that it leaves you wondering why some of these critiques are in there.
Remember, this is a report that pulled no punches, finding, in the exact words of the special counsel, that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials while he was a private citizen from his time as vice president. That's where these documents stemmed. That in doing so, he presented serious risks to national security, but that no charges would be filed because, and this is the quote that is getting everybody's attention, because the special counsel says a jury would have a hard time convicting a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. We'll have team coverage tonight on this. I want to start with Monica Alba, who is posted up near the White House for us. So, Monica, it is sort of pushback day, right? It was pushback night last night from the president himself, holding that hastily arranged news conference, essentially. Now today, you have seen a slew of Democrats coming out, some allies suggesting that they are angry by what they see as a gratuitous mention here by the special counsel of President Biden's age, his memory lapses, et cetera. Tell me what you're hearing behind the scenes. What do we need to know?
So, Hallie, this is really all about trying to take control back of the narrative, because in many ways, Biden allies and those around him yesterday felt like the narrative was getting away from them because of some of the excerpts in the Robert Hur report. And so their defense today is really twofold. On the main substance and the allegations and the conclusion in there that, of course, didn't come to any criminal charges, but that did say that the president willfully retained classified information, they're pushing back on a couple of points there by saying that some of that was in personal diaries, notebooks that the president kept that he thought from his time as vice president he had a right to keep. They are also blaming that on some staffers who packed up some of the boxes and moved them, and they're saying that he really cooperated fully. So that's part one. Part two were those quotes that got a ton of attention from Robert Hur about the president's own memory being an issue here, and they are really pushing back on that by saying that even though there are certain points in the report that illustrate that, there are other times in the report where it says the president gave a clear or forceful explanation of something. So they feel like this really is a political motivated action that isn't actually, for them, the way they view it, fair. And we heard a little bit more about that argument and rationale from White House spokesman Ian Sams. Take a listen to that.
They have denigrated the rule of law for political purposes. That reality creates a ton of pressure. And in that pressurized political environment, when the inevitable conclusion is that the facts and the evidence don't support any charges, you're left to wonder why this report spends time making gratuitous and inappropriate criticisms of the president.
And the vice president, who herself is a former prosecutor, weighed in on that today, too, saying she found it really gratuitous and really inappropriate and unprofessional, which was notable as well, Hallie.
Yeah, I was going to say that was some strong, a strong presentation from her today, or strong pushback, I should say, from the vice president. As you point out, somebody who understands kind of the legal system here. I also wonder, Monica, you know, one of the things that we've talked about here is President Biden. Voters see his age as a concern. That is just the reality based on a variety of polling that's out there. We heard the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, repeatedly say that President Biden has addressed that head on by kind of joking about his age. He understands that that is a criticism that is out there. Former President Trump is just a few years younger than President Biden, 77 to his 81. He also has had issues of lapses or flubs, mixing up Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley, for example, and yet fewer than half of voters suggest that they have similar concerns about his age and fitness for the job. What do you hear from the sources that you're talking to about that reality?
Yeah, and that was the word they used themselves. They said what Robert Hur painted in his report does not exist in their reality, that the aides and the officials who spend hours and hours and days upon days behind the scenes, behind closed doors with the president in these meetings on all sorts of topics simply do not share this assessment that he has trouble remembering certain things. Of course, this week we saw him really not identify the correct world leaders a couple of times. He mistaked some of them for leaders who have been dead for years. Just last night, he meant to talk about the president of Egypt and instead talked about the president of Mexico. So there have been these moments and these anecdotes where you do see it on display. But overall, everybody says that this is a president who, for years, even as vice president, gaffed, flubbed, made a mistake, but that it is not a larger sign of any cognitive decline or mental acuity. Hallie.
Monica Alba live for us there from outside the White House. Mon, thank you very much. Mark Murray is joining us here now, our political editor here on set. There has been something that has come up, I think, from several corners over the course of the last day. And it was a couple of words, and the two words were James Comey, right? Looking at what James Comey, what happened with Hillary Clinton back before the 2016 campaign. That's when the FBI director reopened that investigation, of course, into her emails 11 days before the election, 10 or 11 days, I think it was. There are some distinctions between what's happening here and distinctions not just in timing. Obviously, we're far further out from the election, but walk us through some of that.
Well, so you and I both covered the Comey revelations in the 2016 presidential campaign. And Hallie, the first was like right after July 4th. I remember where the FBI decided we're not going to prosecute Hillary Clinton over this. Very similar to what we're hearing on the Joe Biden situation. But Comey ended up having a news conference where he referred to her as being careless. And of course, that was politically kind of damaging to Hillary Clinton at the time. Now, I'd argue the more damaging James Comey revelation, as you mentioned, was the one 12 days before the 2016 presidential election, where there's the second email right at the middle, right as people were going to the polls. But again, you know, because of the relevance of President Biden's age, people see this as damaging, as like when James Comey said, well, Hillary Clinton was careless. You can't trust her on the private email server. So there's some similarities here. But I will say the biggest difference is that James Comey was the FBI director. Robert Hur is a special counsel in this situation. And to me, the more analogous situation is when Robert Mueller had his Russia investigation report. Remember, not charging Donald Trump at all, but also having a lot of information that did not make that Trump White House all that happy with the information when it came to what Mueller ended up uncovering in that Russia investigation.
So given all this, what are you seeing in some of the numbers as we've been polling now and in the field for months on this issue of President Biden's age, his fitness for office? What do you see as we look ahead to November now? Look ahead to what is likely to be potentially a general election matchup between President Biden and Donald Trump.
Yeah, Hallie, I think a lot of this stuff has already been baked in. And you and I have been discussing, our poll finds 76% of voters saying that they end up having concerns about Joe Biden's age and fitness, almost identical to what our poll found back in September. And, you know, our polls found very similar numbers about concerns about Donald Trump and the legal challenges that he ends up facing. Those haven't really budged at all. And if we think about the hypothetical rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, do remember that we've had this before, and a lot of voters' minds have been made up well before we've gotten to this situation. Now, I'm going to be really interested in a lot of people who decided actually not who did not vote in 2020, and how would their vote be breaking? And then most crucially of all, the people who decide, I'm not going to vote at all, or I might end up voting third party. So I think a lot of this has been baked in, and maybe the biggest factor going forward is what people end up saying is like, you know what, I might sit out this election, or I might vote a third party. That could end up being the biggest factor of all.
Mark Murray, lots to cover over the course of these last 48 hours. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's take it to Florida because we're tracking some breaking news from down south. 2 people dead after a small plane crashed on a highway just outside Naples. You can see it here. The plane totally up in flames, big black clouds of smoke up in the sky. This is over I-75 with cars obviously stopped on both sides of the highway. 3 other people were also on board that plane. It is not clear what their conditions are. Tom Costello is joining us now. And Tom, in just the last hour, we're getting some new details about the plane and some of the contact it had with air traffic control, right? Tell us what you know.
Yeah, that's right. Let's talk you through all of this now. So 5 people were on this private jet. It's a Bombardier 600 Challenger. It's a 2-engine jet. Private jet. The plane had taken off from Ohio State University Airport in Columbus, Ohio, though not affiliated with the OSU. It was scheduled to land in Naples before then flying on to Fort Lauderdale. But literally 3 to 4 minutes before landing, the pilot radioed that he had lost both engines and would not make the runway. The plane then crashed on the southbound lanes of I-75, Tamiami as it's known down there, clipping the wall and a truck before exploding into a ball of fire and tumbling down the road. Airport and county firefighters used foam to put out the flames. The plane is operated by a charter company based in Fort Lauderdale, and so now the FAA and the NTSB will investigate it. But a horrific crash, as you mentioned. We do have 2 fatalities. 3 people appear to have walked away from this crash scene. Hallie?
And Tom, just to underscore something that you said, the appearance that perhaps this plane may have lost both engines?
He radioed that he had lost both engines, the pilot on board. And then the question becomes, okay, well, then was he trying to make, as his second choice, the highway? It would appear so, but that's just supposition, because if you look at the flight path, he was coming down the Gulf of Mexico over the water, banked left, banked hard to then go over towards the airport, over towards Florida, and then at a certain point just tried to put it down on the southbound lanes of I-75.
Tom Costello, thank you very much for staying on top of that developing news for us. Appreciate it.
You bet.
We've also got some breaking economic news to get to, with the S&P 500 setting a new record, closing above 5,000 for the first time ever. It's the 5th straight week that the S&P has ended the week higher, fueled by strong economic growth. There's also a better than expected earnings season. Let's get right to Mike Santoli at the New York Stock Exchange. Mike, we're so glad to have you. Put it in super plain English, right? Because we say it all the time. The markets are not the economy, but this is still a good signal about where the economy may be headed. Fair?
Fair, for sure, Hallie. I mean, look, the market does run, at least in parallel to the economy directionally. Yeah. And yes, a better than expected U.S. economic growth, both in the latter part of last year and continuing into the first weeks of this year, combined with the fact that inflation has come down steadily enough and down to a point where the Federal Reserve has said its next move is to probably cut rates in the coming months. That has all cheered Wall Street. Yes, corporate profits have also started to grow again. They actually had dipped into the middle part of last year. So that together, I would say, with just a really impressive amount of excitement, maybe exuberance over AI and investments related to it, that really seems to be one of the sources of upside energy as well.
Okay, so what does this mean for inflation, which is something else we talk about a lot here, right? This question of what's the Fed going to do on interest rates, et cetera. Help us understand the tea leaves on that.
Well, first of all, the recent trend in inflation has been very encouraging. If you look over the last 6 months, the key inflation gauge that the Federal Reserve looks at has basically been around its long-term target of 2%. Now, the headline number, the CPI, it's going to get reported next week for January, so we're going to get an update on this. It's in the zone of the target. Let's say it's around 3%. So all of that solidifies the idea that we had this huge inflation scare. Interest rates went up a lot. The economy seemed to have a little bit of a stall for a brief period of time, but not for long. And that has combined, along with supply chains clearing, to bring inflation down to levels that are no longer alarming. Now, whether it persists and whether the Fed can say, yeah, we did our job and we're going to lower rates, that remains to be seen. But pretty much everything that's happened since let's say the later part of last summer has definitely fit into the idea that inflation is more benign.
That's super interesting. Okay, Mike, so then what is the vibe check where you are at the stock exchange? Are people feeling pretty good?
Yes, they are. I mean, I have to say, there's been this overlay of skepticism. It seems as if the market's come a long way in a short period of time, and it has. It's up 22% since late October. It's been on a massive run, and people do think some of those tech stocks are acting a little bit overheated, and plausibly so. Maybe you can expect some kind of a pullback. But in general, it's a bull market. People are starting to participate in it. We'll see if it has much more to run from here. But most of the signals suggest that the next pullback probably wouldn't be too deep or lasting.
Mike Santoli, we're so glad to have you. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks so much.
I want to take you overseas now because the Israeli prime minister is now ordering the military there to evacuate more than 1 million Gazans in the southernmost city on the strip there, with the Israeli military getting ready to launch a new ground assault in that location, the same place that it told people to go to for shelter when this war started. A lot of questions right now about how the Israeli military is actually going to get these civilians out and where they could possibly go that is actually safe. It comes as the U.S. is putting out a new warning that the Israeli invasion of Rafah risks disaster. President Biden calling the Israeli military offensive, in his words, over the top in what seems to be his most pointed criticism of Israel yet. Matt Bradley is following all of this from Tel Aviv and is joining us now. Why now for Rafah, for Israel, for this city in Gaza here?
Well, the why now question is simply, it seems like, because that's the last place in the Gaza Strip that the Israeli military hasn't invaded on their ground offensive that's been lasting ever since a couple of weeks after those October 7th Hamas terror attacks against Israel. And it is the last place, as you mentioned, where a lot of the Palestinian population of the Gaza Strip has gone. There's now thought to be about 1.5 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. In Rafah, most of them, they're not residents of Rafah. They came from elsewhere in the Gaza Strip. Many of them has been displaced more than once. And as you mentioned, Hallie, that raises the question, where are these people supposed to go? Now, Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered an organization for an evacuation of Rafah, but it's not clear where they would go if the rest of the Gaza Strip has been destroyed. And that kind of answers your question there. Most of this coastal enclave has been all but flattened, and most of the residents have been evicted. So this really is raising a lot of questions among aid agencies, among international organizations like the United Nations, all of them wondering what Benjamin Netanyahu's order really means for those people who are still there. Life in Rafah now has become absolutely unbearable. People are dying, or not dying, but we're hearing that there are starvation there. We're seeing a lot of deaths, of course, by bombardment. There's now more than 27,000 people who have been killed in the Gaza Strip by the Israeli attack ever since October 7th. That number could go up even more now that the Israelis are training their guns on that final readout, where we're seeing all of these people, millions of them.
And as we talk about what's happening to these civilians in Gaza, Matt, there are questions about when we could potentially see a possible ceasefire and a hostage release. It comes as we're seeing some new reporting that the CIA head is expected to travel to the region again soon. What do we know?
Yeah, I mean, this was reported by Axios, and it's saying that the CIA head is going to be traveling, could be traveling soon. We don't know exactly the date, to Cairo. Now, remember, the CIA chief had been in Paris, and that's where he inked out with counterparts from Egypt and Israel and the prime minister of Qatar a deal that hasn't gone very far. It's been basically rejected both by Hamas and by the Israelis. So it looks as though the Biden administration, by sending Bill Burns, the CIA chief, to Cairo this time, where it looks like that's where the Hamas people are huddling, it looks like that means that the Biden administration is trying to redouble their efforts to get this deal over the line, which only a couple of days ago looked like it was just dead in the water, with everybody saying on all sides that they weren't going to be accepting it. But diplomats, and again, it looks like diplomats from the U.S., from Egypt, from Qatar, are still trying to push this deal that could eventually halt the fighting in the Gaza Strip.
Matt Bradley, live for us in Tel Aviv with a lot going on, as always. Matt, thank you for being there. Let's bring you back here at home because there's kind of a weird warm-up happening in the Midwest, and that is part of what is fueling some of the weather that we're seeing out there, like this first ever tornado in Wisconsin. Look at this. The funnel cloud there is part of an unprecedented storm. It went through mostly rural areas, but left a bunch of destruction behind. Look at this. Homes without roofs, barns destroyed, windows shattered, even some dead cattle. This is the kind of severe weather that you typically see there in the late spring, early summer, but The warm temperatures in the Midwest this week are not normal. They're seeing highs today, 15 to 30 degrees above average. Cities like Detroit, Milwaukee, Grand Rapids could all set records even after the warmest January on record. Angie Lastman is joining us now. Feels like we were just talking about record cold temperatures in parts of the Midwest, like in Iowa. Now we're talking about unseasonably warm temperatures. Is this all El Nino related?
Yeah, so here's the deal, Hallie. We've got a storm system that gave us the fuel that we needed for some of these systems. You said it yourself. It was very spring-like. That's when we often see some of these stronger, more severe storm systems working through. And that's what happened yesterday. But you're wondering, where did we get the fuel for those? For these systems, you need some warmth. You need some moisture. It was just warm enough across the Midwest in places like Wisconsin, where we were seeing upper 50s and a little bit of moisture to tap into to see some of these tornadoes forming. We know that with human-fueled climate change, this is going to be something that we often see more of as we get down the line and as it worsens. And that puts us in the record books. You mentioned it. February, the first ever that we've seen a tornado in the state of Wisconsin. That happened last night. It isn't the earliest on record that we've seen a tornado ever, but there's only two other occurrences. You got to go back to 2008 to see the top one, and then 1967, the one standing in the secondary spot. So the temperatures, yes, they were a big player in yesterday's tornado, in yesterday's severe weather. And you can see even today, we are standing well above normal for our high temperatures, running 20 to 30 degrees above normal, not just across the Midwest, but all the way out east too. Washington, D.C., New York. St. Louis came in at 69 degrees, near 70 degrees this afternoon, Hallie, and these temperatures are going to continue over the next couple of days.
Angie Lastman, thank you very much there, breaking it all down for us. Appreciate it. As we've been on the air even tonight, we've heard from officials in Tennessee who say police now have in custody the brother of a man who allegedly shot and killed a deputy. With this urgent manhunt happening now for the suspect, who police describe as armed and dangerous. The shooting happened at a traffic stop, killing that deputy. You can see the processional honoring him here. Deputy Greg McCowan. All those police cars headed to his burial. McCowan was shot and killed after police say the suspect refused to get out of his car. Another deputy was also hurt. With the police dispatch recordings capturing it as it happened.
35 shots fired. I'm hit. 334's hit. Help! Help! I've been shot. 335. 344's down. I've been hit. Suspect fled.
I want to bring in now NBC's Guad Venegas, who's covering this one for us tonight. And we're getting an update now, even late this evening, from police. What do we know?
Hallie, we know that the brother of the suspect was taken into custody for aiding the defendant. He's also being held on a $1 million bond. That's all the information that they gave about that arrest. The suspect is still at large. This is 42-year-old Kenneth DeHart. Multiple agencies have joined in the search for the suspect. He is now being charged with first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, as well as one count of a felon possession of a weapon in connection to a shooting. There's also a combined reward of $62,000 for any information that may lead up to his arrest. The authorities are also asking neighbors in the area where this happened to share any videos or any information they might have. It is suspected that he took off on foot after the incident happened, Hallie.
What about the community? Because we saw those very solemn moments, the procession heading down with the hearse today. What are we hearing from people in this area of Tennessee?
Well, this is an area where it seems like authorities and members of the community all knew each other. The sheriff has been very emotional in both press conferences, speaking of what happened, losing this officer, this deputy, 43-year-old Greg McCowan. You saw the procession, the number of vehicles and those that attended that this afternoon. The sheriff today in the press conference spoke about what it was like to talk to the family of the officer that was killed, and also spoke about the other officer, the deputy, 22-year-old Shelby Eggers, who was shot in the leg. For now, a lot of the attention is focused on catching the suspect. That investigation is moving forward, but they're hoping that the community will cooperate both with information and maybe videos that they might have on cameras outside of the homes where this happened. So authorities are still asking for the public to help as they continue searching for the suspect. The sheriff did say that with all of the help that has come in for this search, he is convinced that they will find the suspect, Hallie.
Guad Venegas, thank you very much for those updates. Appreciate it. We got a lot more to get to here on the show, including a big earthquake hitting Hawaii in just the last couple of hours, a reality check on the threat of a tsunami in just a minute. Plus, what happened with this moose on the loops? Excuse me, wait, can you say? Okay, I have to say moose on the loops on moose on the loose on the slopes. I didn't write that. Let me tell you, that's a mouthful right there. Just kidding. We'll tell you what happened. So former President Donald Trump, as we speak, speaking himself to a crowd of NRA members up in Pennsylvania. You're getting a live look there at Mr. Trump, putting his political muscle behind this controversial group, the NRA, which is in the middle of a massive corruption trial. It's hemorrhaging members, and all of it's raising some new questions tonight about an organization that for a while was seen as one of the most powerful in politics. Our Garrett Hake has more.
The NRA working this week to regain relevance, hosting former President Trump at a major event as it digs in, fighting a long legal battle over civil corruption charges. New York Attorney General Letitia James claiming that current and former leaders of the National Rifle Association, including Wayne LaPierre, misspent huge sums of NRA money.
They use millions upon millions of dollars from the NRA for personal use, including for lavish trips for themselves and their families.
The case alleging LaPierre charged over $500,000 on private jet trips to the Bahamas for his family. LaPierre resigned just before the trial began, citing health reasons. His lawyers have defended his conduct in the trial. When he took the stand, he testified that he had no knowledge of the large amounts of money the NRA was spending on private planes and cars, but did not dispute dollar figures when presented with receipts and seemed to confirm using funds for personal travel. It's all happening as the organization also faces declining political and cultural influence. It used to strike fear into the hearts of politicians with its vast, hyperactive membership base and massive lobbying power. But tax filings show the organization has lost over 1 million members in the last 5 years, with dues down $14 million just between 2021 and 2022, according to an audit filed as part of the suit. The trial highlighting internal turmoil between leaders. But in a potential blow to the New York AG, NRA lawyers filing a motion asking the judge to dismiss a portion of the case. They say some claims have passed the statute of limitations and may not apply to the executives on trial. A decision from the judge on the motion still pending.
It could be significant. What the judge is voicing doubt about are the claims against the individual defendants, not the NRA itself.
Stuart Bishop has been in the courtroom covering the trial for Law 360.
As one of the people on the Attorney General's team said in open court, what they're concerned about is that Wayne LaPierre could essentially, after trial, walk right back into his old position.
The New York AG's office declining to comment, and neither the NRA nor LaPierre responded to our request for comment. The opening day of the trial, the NRA's counsel said in a statement that the AG, quote, cannot prove that the association or its board did anything wrong. While the case doesn't carry any criminal charges, it marks what seems to be a shift in how some prosecutors and victims are combating gun violence in the courtroom. The focus was once almost exclusively on holding shooters criminally responsible. But now prosecutors changing tactics, Letitia James scrutinizing the NRA's finances. And just this week, the mother of a Michigan school shooter becoming the first parent to be found criminally responsible for a child's mass shooting after failing to secure the firearm or act on warning signs.
And Garrett is joining us now live from where that's happening. So, Garrett, given everything that you just laid out there, how should we be reading into former President Trump's appearance in front of this group tonight where you are?
Well, Hallie, I think it's a little bit about returning loyalty. Remember, the NRA was one of the first kind of mainstream conservative organizations to lend its imprimatur to Donald Trump back in 2015, 2016, when he was a New Yorker, former Democrat, no history of gun ownership or support for hunting or anything like that. But they embraced Donald Trump culturally pretty early in his political career, and he has long embraced them right back. He has spoken to them at dark times before, too, including a couple years ago, right after Uvalde. I covered that speech as well. So this is a very politically activated, very dialed-in group of voters in a very important swing state in this particular case. It only makes sense for him to try to return their embrace, even if this organization is not what it used to be historically.
Garrett Hake live for us there where it's all going down. Garrett, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Marine Corps now identifying the 5 Marines who were killed in that helicopter crash we told you about. Lance Corporal Donovan Davis, Sergeant Alec Langan, Captain Benjamin Moulton, Captain Jack Casey, Captain Miguel Nava. All 5 were in their 20s. That chopper crashed in the mountains outside San Diego during a storm. The military is still investigating what exactly happened here. Number 2, earthquakes shook Hawaii's Big Island and Southern California in just the last few hours. No reports of any serious damage or injuries so far, which is good news. And as for a tsunami threat, officials say there is none. Number 3, Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson getting named league MVP for the 2nd time, just the 11th player in NFL history to win the award twice. He completed nearly 70% of his passes, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions this season. Number 4, look at this. A moose on the loose on the slopes in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Look at it. That's scary, man. It's going fast. It's following skiers down a mountain. Nobody got hurt. Number 5. Guess who's going to headline the White House Correspondents' Dinner this April? Colin Jost, of course, the co-star of SNL's Weekend Update segment there. Before getting into comedy and writing a book, Jost was a newspaper reporter and an editor at one point in his life, too. When we come back, a lot more to get to here on the show, including police arresting one person tonight after a tourist was shot in Times Square. Some of the new details we're learning about this incident and the suspect, plus what officials say happened overnight in Iceland after that volcanic eruption. We are learning in just the last few minutes that a 15-year-old migrant is under arrest, suspected of shooting an innocent bystander near New York's Times Square, according to senior law enforcement officials. All of it happening just after 7 p.m. last night. Police say 3 people were shoplifting, putting clothes into a shopping bag when they were approached by store security. That's when police say one of the suspects pulled out a gun and fired. A tourist was hit in the leg. She was taken to the hospital and is expected to recover. The alleged shooter is also suspected of attempted murder for firing at an officer who responded to the scene. Tom Winter is joining us now. So, Tom, any updates here on this investigation, on the suspected shooter? Police have been looking for him before this incident. They obviously seem to have found him.
That's exactly right, Hallie. And so it was just a little more than 24 hours ago when NYPD detectives, and really it's the squad detectives at each individual precinct who do everything from a stolen check, a stolen watch, to a body found in some of the more grisly things that are found in New York City. They began working on this case along with the rest of the Detective Bureau and other components of the NYPD to figure out who this person was that was involved in this alleged brazen crime that we saw in this incredible police response that you're looking at right now, just outside of our doors here. And so when they put it all together, they realized this person was somebody they were looking to speak to in connection with an armed robbery in the Bronx in January, was previously involved in a shooting in a shell casing that was found just a few blocks from here. So as this person's alleged behavior began to increase in violence, they knew they wanted to get this person off the streets, and working with the U.S. Marshals this afternoon, they were able to pick him up about 30 minutes or so north of New York City.
Talk about the sort of context this happened in here in Times Square. Obviously, everybody, like, it's where the ball drops, right? Everybody knows where Times Square is. It looks a lot different now than it did years ago. But walk us through some of the numbers.
Well, that's a generous way of putting it, Hallie, because I think there'd be no easier way of getting us all fired than if we were to show video of Times Square at night from the 1970s, certainly inside the establishments, as it were. Look, I mean, you're looking at it now. It's more Disney World than it is crime world. It's very well lit, very commercial. Crime was obviously rampant back then. Drug use, all sorts of other adult-related crimes were going on back in the 70s and into the early 80s. It's become an area now where there's been no homicides over the past several years. There's been 2 shootings. We've seen crime come down continuously, even just in this precinct, Midtown South, which covers Times Square. You're talking about 30% drops in shooting in certain crimes, rather, robberies and assaults just over the past 2 years. You're looking at them there. And citywide, you're looking at big drops in shootings as well. So it's something the NYPD has been focused on gun crime. They have some other issues with crime, but you're looking at the stats for Times Square and that general vicinity now. I mean, those are very steep drops in robberies and assaults over the last year to date. So that's what they're focused on. And, you know, we'll just have to see where some of these enforcement efforts go from here.
Tom Winter, thank you very much for being on top of that one for us, and I appreciate it.
You got it.
NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our international teams have done it for you. Here is some of what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Pakistan, no clear winner in the country's election. Jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan declaring victory in an AI-generated message from prison after a bunch of candidates he supported won the most seats of any party, but it doesn't look like they have a majority. Remember, Khan's party has been essentially outlawed, so all their candidates had to run as independents. His main rival, Nawaz Sharif, also a former prime minister, says he's going to try to form a coalition government with other political parties. In Iceland, look at this, new aerial video of this volcanic eruption that's damaging roads and hot water pipelines in the area. Look at that. Wow. The eruption died down a little bit today, but scientists warn that the area nearby could have more similar eruptions in the next couple months. And in Hong Kong, the organizer of an Inter-Miami soccer game says it'll refund half the ticket price to fans who attended a game, but got upset they didn't get to see Lionel Messi play last weekend. People paid like $600+ for tickets to see the Argentinian superstar, but he sat out. Pressure to refund the tickets grew after Messi played in a game in Tokyo just a few days later. So tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. Students missing school chronically is at an all-time high. And some school districts are taking some pretty intense measures to try to stop it, like fines, community service, even the threat of jail time for some parents. So is putting parents behind bars the solution? Rahema Ellis has more.
Almost 15 million students chronically absent or missing at least 18 days of school. That's the challenge the country faces.
4 in 10 D.C. students are missing too much school.
Truancy and absenteeism are at record highs.
And it got worse during the pandemic. 80% worse in the 2021-2022 school year versus the year before. So how are states trying to solve the truancy problem? Some parents are being prosecuted and locked up.
I don't want to miss out on high school.
Texas sophomore Diego Ruiz says he's a diligent student, excited about the high school experience.
It's really important years of your life.
But he and his mom, Felicia Perez, were tied up in court, both charged with violating the state's mandatory school attendance laws after Diego was absent 21 days from Woodville High last spring in pain with a stomach ulcer.
I thought that this was just ridiculous because of the accusations.
In addition to a $200 fine against her, Perez's son was ordered to do 16 hours of community service, and she could face jail time. What would happen to your family if the police were to arrest you for these truancy charges?
That would be very counterproductive to what it is that they were trying to do, which was get them to school.
Their story, an example of some of the more draconian truancy penalties across the country.
No one is prosecuting people like me.
Missouri attorney Ellen Flotman worked on appealing the sentence of a single mother who served 15 days in jail for her son's 14-day absence.
They're prosecuting indigent, poor single mothers like my 2 clients.
Some districts are paying attention, partnering with outside agencies to combat the problem without quickly moving to prosecution.
We'll do in-home family assessments, or they'll do family assessments at the school.
Mobile, Alabama District Attorney Keith Blackwood says early intervention is having a tremendous impact in his district.
As of December, we had 10 petitions filed. That is still far less than the hundreds of petitions that were filed over the last 4 or 5 years.
Almost 61,000 cases were petitioned to juvenile courts in 2018, according to a national report from the Council of State Governments Justice Center. Their research shows that an arrest, court involvement, or suspension decreases the chance of kids attending classes and completing high school. In Texas, truancy laws require intervention before the courts get involved. The district says if a student continues to be absent 10 or more days after it has exhausted all resources available, it is required by state law to refer the student to truancy court. Perez disputes this claim in describing communication with school officials.
There should be some sympathy in there, and there should be some concern. There was nothing. There was no go-between.
How do you feel about this fine and the potential arrest of your mother?
I passed all my classes last year. I got masters on all the tests, but despite all of that, it's still an issue. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't have been in the first place.
Rahema Ellis, NBC News.
Our thanks to Rahema for that reporting. A lot more to get to here on the show, including coming up how Disney's working to try to get advertisements to fit your mood. How? We've got that in just a sec. Disney, set to use the magic of AI to help make its ads fit your mood a little better. In other words, trying to match the advertisements you see, the commercials, to the vibe of like a specific scene in a show or movie you're watching on Disney Plus or Hulu. They're calling it Disney's Magic Words. How does it work? It's like a combo of AI and machine learning that'll analyze and tag scenes from its library and then ID the brands, the images, the moods that work best with whatever you're seeing. Vanity Fair special correspondent Brian Stelter joins us now to talk about it all. Brian, it's great to see you. So listen, there are some experts out there like Ad Age who say this is one of the ways that advertisers and marketers are really trying to explore how some of this technology could be used to change how ads are delivered. And I'm so struck by and you know this, listen, in the eyes of these big companies, all of us are simply vessels for search words for the algorithm, right? We're all targetable. And the better these companies can target us, the more money they'll pay. Fair?
100%. This is why I thought this was the most interesting tech and media story of the week, because what Disney is doing is what many advertising executives want to do. I've spoken with these marketing firms that are very intrigued by this technology. And this is not years and years away. This is already happening, and we're going to see more and more of it. If you think about the Super Bowl this weekend, the Super Bowl is a dumb version of ad targeting, right? The advertisers know that when you're watching the game, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be drinking, they're going to sell you ads for chips and for beer and for drinks. Now take that to the next level, right? You're watching Disney Plus, you're streaming a movie, and because of the emotions of the movie, advertisers will be able to target those emotions. I could see this going really well in some ways, Hallie, but imagine the downsides as well. If you're watching a bunch of depressing, dramatic, dark movies in a row, are you going to get an ad for online therapy? This is something that's going to have to be carefully watched.
That's such an interesting point. And what's also interesting here is the way that we're looking at Disney, and we've talked about Disney a bunch this week. I'm sure you saw CNBC's interview with the Disney CEO there. But to make an investment in technology like this, specifically for streaming, at a time when so much of the focus, as you well know, and as our audience on streaming well knows, it is becoming such a player as it compares to linear TV.
Right. These media companies have to make it worth the while for consumers in order to share your information, your data, to be targeted in this personal way. It has to be value. There has to be a value add. You know, when I go and sign up for a trip to Disney World, it knows who I am because of Disney Plus. So there's a benefit. And NBC's parent Universal does the same thing. So there are big advantages to this. But we should look around the corner and think what's coming. For example, Apple Vision Pro in the news in the last couple of weeks. We're going to be in a world in the future where the billboards walking down the road are going to change based on every individual viewer. Each person's going to see a different advertisement. That is both scary, but also potentially really incredible and maybe in some cases valuable. It's just we don't want to be abused by technology. We want to use it to our benefit. And that's the important part of the trade-off here.
Of course, because some of that, too, is in the eye of the beholder. Brian Stelter, thank you so much. It's great to see you, as always. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the show, why you may have to be a high roller to sit up even real high at the Super Bowl in Vegas. The big money for the big game. Next. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're thinking about a last-minute road trip to the Super Bowl, hope you have a couple months' paycheck stashed away. That's because this year's game is on pace to be the second most expensive Super Bowl ever. Take a look at this. The average ticket price right now. So this is the average ticket, more than $8,000. That's the bar on the very bottom of your screen. The only one more expensive was a couple years ago in 2021. But remember, that's because COVID only meant that about a third of fans could get into the stadium anyway. So classic supply and demand thing there. But listen, that ticket is actually a relative steal. Why? Because look at this chart. Prices just a week and a half ago were more than $11,000. The cheapest ticket, $5,900 right now. Cheapest. So the worst seat in the stadium could be yours for about the same price as renting an apartment in Vegas for 3 months. Steve Patterson is in Las Vegas for the city's first ever Super Bowl. And Steve, okay, it is hella expensive to be at the game, but there are plenty of people ready to spend more money in the gambling capital of the world. Feels like this is a weekend where budget is a dirty word, maybe.
Budget is absolutely a dirty word. And look, part of the reason why I'm standing here is because it is so incredibly expensive to get inside Allegiant Stadium, almost nearly impossible. That's why they have this fan experience. And certainly this is one of the main attractions, but it is not the attraction. The attraction in Vegas, of course, will always be gambling and sports betting. This year, Americans are estimated to spend about $60 million on the big game. That's just betting on the big game, about $115 million in 2023 on all sporting related events. This is big business. Finally, for the first time, the NFL is realizing that, and they're cashing in as well, partnering with some of these sports books. They're estimated to take in somewhere around $1 billion in revenue from sports betting, above board, of course, on their own. About that, I spoke to one of the biggest sports books in town, the CEO of BetMGM, and here's what he told me about this new partnership that really nobody expected. Check this out.
The NFL is implicitly acknowledging the symbiotic relationship between what we do and what they do and how fans love both. And so we're bringing it together in a legitimate way.
And of course, it's so interesting because 10 years ago, nobody would have predicted that there would be a partnership with the NFL. The NFL barely wanted to have its own NFL team in Vegas because of the association, Hallie.
I mean, it is an economic driver, right? And this particular Super Bowl is supposed to bring something like $1 billion to this area. But there's also some controversy about how this stadium and other stadiums are getting built, right?
Yeah, that Stadium Allegiant is one of the most expensive stadiums ever built in the world. It's about $2 billion. It is privately funded, but with the help of taxpayers. And when I say help, I mean heavy help, about 40% taxpayer funded. That's $750 million. To the people that are for it, they might argue, okay, everybody that comes into the Vegas on the Strip spends about $1,100. It is an economic generator for the region. But this is also a region where the school district, per pupil funding, classroom sizes, some of the worst in the country. It has people crying out, and they want to do the same thing to attract the Oakland A's here as well. And people not so happy about that. Hallie?
Yeah, super interesting. Steve, I can only imagine that you've been holding that football for a reason. Go long. Let's see it. What you got? Where's your arm?
I threw it. You couldn't see it, but it was an amazing.
Did you throw it to anybody or just into space?
That was no. I just threw it into the crowd. I made sure nobody was around. This guy's going to throw it back to me though. Heavy.
All right. Well,
There
you
you
got
go.
hands. Thank you, sir.
Very cathartic.
Appreciate you. Have fun this weekend. Glad you're there. More coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.